First of all, thank you. Thank you to KDI, and thank you to the ministry and all who have put this event together and for inviting myself. And I'm rather humbled to be in the same audience with so many really smart people who are going to be speaking today. I'm not an academic and a researcher. I'm a government guy. Okay, that's pretty boring. But it's an honor to be here. And unlike, I think, a lot of the other talks that you'll see in the next 2 days, which are going to be very detailed, very analytical, mine is just kind of to give you a snapshot of San Francisco. I represent the city and county of San Francisco. We're a pretty unique city. And I just want to tell you what's happened from our perspective as a government leadership over the last 5 to 10 years, even longer in our city, and where we are today in terms of the sharing economy. Okay, so it's not going to be real detailed. There's probably a lot that I'll mention that is going to seem like second nature to you or old history, but we really just wanted to give you what a snapshot is of San Francisco, what we have experienced, what we're seeing today, and what we've found. Okay, so just to set the stage, what about San Francisco? There's some quick facts. We're not small, only about 850,000, 1.2 or 3 million people in the daytime. Small, little 118 kilometers, and the map didn't make the slide there because that was too bad. We're at 3% unemployment right now. Anderson School out of UCLA 2 weeks ago issued a report that said that San Francisco is at full employment these days, so we're actually doing pretty well. We've created 76 to 80,000 jobs just in the last 4 years. Between 2011 and 2014, San Francisco, this little city, created more jobs than 46 of the 50 United States. More jobs in Illinois, more jobs in Pennsylvania, more jobs in Florida, on and on and on. It's a pretty amazing place. And you can see within walking distance of my office in City Hall, walking distance, I can walk to 2,000 technology firms. Some big ones, some small ones, some startups. I can walk to about 150 biotechnology firms and a couple of hundred green technology firms. So we are calling ourselves the Innovation Center of the United States, and my mayor would say Innovation Center of the world. He might have some disagreement from people in this room about where they're from, but at least in San Francisco, that's what we're calling ourselves today. Okay, so we're here to talk about the sharing economy. So my first question is, how many people here are engaged in the sharing economy? Okay, I see about 5 hands. Okay. I frankly don't believe that. Okay. I am probably one of the least technically adept people that you will ever meet on this planet. Okay. In order to use my phone, I have to call my little 18-year-old daughter and say, how do I do this? How do I do this? Or I give it to her and she does this. Dad. And there it is, right? So I am not somebody who is a great adopter of technologies and things. And yet, when I was coming here, I said, am I involved in the sharing economy at all? Let's look at my life, just as me, a 59-year-old Luddite. What am I doing? Well, what's that? It's a little picture. I know it's hard to see in the back. That is the Airbnb property that we rented in Amsterdam for our summer vacation this year. That's my daughter right there, the one probably shrugging because I'm asking her how to use my phone. Okay? Airbnb. What's this? This is Waze. Okay? You have Waze here in Seoul because I used it coming in from the airport last night to try to figure out how many hours I was going to be in traffic. Okay? Waze is a directional thing. It's a GPS, but everything that comes into Waze is real time from people who use it. So they're telling you, go this way, go that way, whatever. They're putting their information on it. In other words, it's a shared GPS. Okay? I use that every day in my car to figure out the traffic jams to get home in San Francisco. What is that? What the heck is a picture of tomato plants doing at a conference like this? Well, my wife and I have a very nice garden at our house. We grow lots of tomatoes. We grow so many tomatoes that we don't know what to do with them because they all ripen at the same time. So what do? We go on free cycle, and people come over and pick those tomatoes free because we say we have too many tomatoes. And so they come over and they strip our tomatoes and they use them for good purposes, hopefully at home. Now this is the last one. I haven't used this service yet, but I'm thinking about it. That's my driveway. That's my car. You see there's space there. Well, now there's a site called way.com, and I happen to live near the airport in San Francisco. I'm 10 minutes from the airport in San Francisco. So they're now allowing us who have driveways near the airport to rent out our driveways to those people that want to leave their car near the airport but don't want to pay $25 a day. So I'm considering that because for me it's very convenient. You can leave your car there. I'll even drive you to the airport because I have an office at the airport. and do that. So I'm considering this. So I'm already engaged in the sharing economy in ways that I didn't even think about. Now, let's compare that with the typical young professional millennial in San Francisco who I work with. Okay, I'm gonna say my example is Susan. Susan is a young colleague of mine. She actually worked on this PowerPoint for me. She's really sharp. She's totally involved in the sharing economy on a day-to-day basis. She gets up in the morning, and the first thing she does is she goes on her computer or on her smartphone and she looks at the site next door, which is all of her neighbors are on this site, and it's sharing neighborhood information. She's checking out what's happening in her neighborhood that day. Then she makes sure, and she goes, I think we have people from Lyft here, I'm not sure. She goes on and she schedules her Lyft ride to get to work. Before she leaves for work, she checks with TaskRabbit because she has one of those people coming in to clean her house that day. And she leaves her wash outside her door for Washio to pick up, which is a shared economy washing. So she has her laundry, so it'll be ready at the end of the day. She goes to work, and she's actually working in a co-sharing space, a co-working space that she found on Desks Near Us, another site. And in San Francisco now, we have over 50 different co-working operations happening in our city and growing, all private. I think that's a very important point. This is not government. These are private. Okay. While she's at work, she came across something that was of interest, so she put it on her Pinterest page to share with everybody. And then it got to be lunchtime, so she went online and ordered from Grubhub to have food delivered to her. She also had excess clothing that she wanted to get rid of, so she put that on Yurtle, which is a site, again, like FreeCycle. It's a very equivalent to that. And then when it was time to get home, she went on to Get Around, which is looking at either getting a car home or carpooling for her to get back home. And then when she got home, she's hungry. She ordered off Feastly. This is not ludicrous, what I'm saying, by the way. This is real life. I have many, many young colleagues that their day-to-day activities are like this. This is not something that's totally made up. They order from Feastly. Feastly comes over and delivers the food to them, cooked by somebody around the corner. When they're done, they have a lot left over, so they go on leftover swap. And that food can either go to those who are hungry or can go to to food banks. And then in the evening, because Susan is somebody that does a lot of do-it-yourself stuff, she goes on Etsy to see about selling some of these projects and things that she can, again, to her neighbors and others. So this is just to give you an idea of what life is like in San Francisco right now, and to show you that the sharing economy has taken place and is in place. This is not a ludicrous example. You could find many people working with me, working in our city, that they would say this is not enough. I do a lot more than that on a day-to-day basis. So we're calling ourselves the epicenter of the sharing economy today. According to a recent review done by the Telegraph in the United Kingdom, over 15% of all shared economy companies are in San Francisco. Okay, that doesn't sound like a lot, but look at, we're 1.018% of the world's population in San Francisco. So we're not a big place, but we are where this is happening. You've all heard the term unicorn. It's kind of overused. But 4 of the top 10 unicorns in the world are in San Francisco. If you include Palo Alto as part of the Bay Area, we got 5. If you go to number 11, that's Square, so we'd actually have 6 out of the top 11 in the Bay Area. Most of these, Uber, Airbnb, Pinterest, Dropbox, their headquarters within a couple hundred meters of where I work. And as always, San Francisco and the Bay Area is the locus, the focus of all venture capital funding for the world. This is just in the first quarter here. Last year, nearly 40% of all VC in the United States came into the Bay Area, primarily into San Francisco. Uber was a lot of that, but it's still, this is where the VC capital is. Why San Francisco? I think these are pretty straightforward. Silicon Valley has been the electronics and the IT center of the world for a long time. San Francisco has been part of that. We haven't been the epicenter of it. We've been more of the business service center, but that has changed as we've shifted into the software area. So the great minds, the great venture capital funding, all those things that existed in Silicon Valley just migrated up into San Francisco. I already talked about the financial system. This is a question that I get from visitors all over the world all the time is, what's the key? How do we do your financial system? I say, well, it took 150 years to create this, right? This is a risk-based financial system that started in the gold rush, frankly, and goes to this day, that takes risk. Venture capital was created on 50 California Street, not far from us in downtown San Francisco. It's where the center of venture capital is. It's where angel capital and angel investing started. It's where crowdsourcing, crowdfunding has really headed up. There's no other place in the world that can copy our financial system. We have a risk-taking environment. Again, this is something culturally in San Francisco. You can fail. In fact, everybody's failed in San Francisco. If you haven't failed, you're not worth your salt, right? If you haven't failed, you haven't done anything innovative. Most places in the world, you fail, you're out, okay? In San Francisco, if you haven't failed, you're kind of out. That's, again, something very unique in our area. We're a very artistic center. There's lots of studies. Somebody may be even talking about this in the next 2 days, about how to be a real innovation center, you have to be a place that's strong in arts and culture, because you have to have those kinds of minds and mindsets and facilities available to people. We're incredibly welcoming to diversity, and I can't highlight that enough. Anybody can come and live and work and thrive in San Francisco. We don't care where you're from. We don't care what your education was. We don't care what you look like. We don't care what your lifestyle is. Just come and be productive. 37% of the people in San Francisco were born outside the United States. 25% of our population is Chinese American. 250,000 Indian Americans living in the Bay Area. On and on and on. I could do that. It's a place where the world mixes. You don't get innovation, you don't get these startups if you don't have that. And we have a population that are trendsetters. Again, that's part of our history. And we think we have a government that's pretty open. And we think that's a big key. Now, to us, you're going to get a lot of other people disagreeing with this probably, and you're going to get different theses and things. But how did this all start? We think these were the early stage setters. eBay, of course, was the first that got online and really changed the marketplace and the way we buy and sell things in the United States. And of course, started just south of us. And all the founders of eBay are still very, very involved in the various sectors. Craigslist is a key. Craig Newmark lives in San Francisco in Haight. We all know him. He's not young. He's about my age. And Craigslist, and you have Craigslist here in Seoul, revolutionized the thinking, in our opinion, of people, because it took away the old traditional methods of how do I sell something, how do I get my message across, how do I connect, how do I look for a job, all those kinds of things, and put it online. And Craig is a really interesting guy. He has this philosophy that communities should be open, they should be democratic, they should be self-regulating, and to us, that whole starting of Craigslist in the 90s, its expansion, really was the catalyst into the thinking that we can go online, that we can create these new models, and that we can take away those old entrenched methods that we use. And I know I've got a founder of Zipcar here. We want to give a salute, because really City Car Share, which is our local one, and Zipcar, they were kind of the first to then take it one more step and say, we can use the internet, we can use online things, but with real world things. We've got real metal here that we can come up with a system. And so in our city, which is a transit-first city, these were some of the early organizers of the idea that you could have some kind of actual tangible item there that you could share. Okay, now it was done differently than car sharing is today, but you could do it. They continue to be very big and very strong in our city. In fact, City Hall, we have dedicated parking spaces right out in front of City Hall for Zipcar and for car share. So thank you very, very much. So these are kind of the early things. Now, obviously, and this is nothing new, what was the big catalyst in our city? There you go. Steve Jobs introducing the smartphone in 2007. And every Apple innovation is introduced in San Francisco and takes off and is first sold in San Francisco. And so that, of course, is what's changed the whole environment. The introduction of the smartphone into everybody's pocket in the world, giving everybody this access. And I don't think I need to say anything more about that. The second thing that we really stress, and we've seen, and we hear this over and over and over from everybody involved in the sharing economy, is the importance of trust. And this is something I don't think you'll see in many things because we don't talk about it. It's something they can't measure. But we think in San Francisco we have a city where trust is inbred in our people. Again, it's a different type of city than other places. And we find that we have an environment, maybe because we're trendsetters, maybe because we're diverse, where people have an inborn tendency to trust. And the shared economy demands trust virtually across the board. You can't rent a room in your house and let strangers in. You can't jump into a car with strangers. You can't share your wash with people if you don't have trust. And we think that's a major, major factor of why a lot of this started in San Francisco. And once that was demonstrated, moved to the world. So here's you guys are going to hear this. This is a couple of the early starts of this. These two guys living in a loft in San Francisco. They couldn't afford the rent, so they put some air mattresses out. They built a little website, and they got 3 people to show up, 2 men and a woman, who paid $80. And they called it Air Bread and Breakfast, okay? And I think we have Airbnb later today, so I won't get into the history, but that was the start of this in San Francisco. Mr. Kemp, Mr. Klisnik, I have the name wrong there. A couple of guys from San Francisco meet at a conference in Paris. Talk about how awful the taxi service is in San Francisco, and they're absolutely correct. It was hideous. Still not so good. Don't tell my taxi friends that. And said, how do we come up with a solution to this? How do we come up with a solution to this? And of course, what came out of that is Uber. Now, in San Francisco, what we have experienced as government is the sharing economy is here to stay. What you're seeing there are a number of logos from various sharing economy companies, all with headquarters in San Francisco. And these are just a few, okay, at this point. We as a government have realized this is now a very important and strategic sector for us. I think you'll get these later. Uber, their market valuation, and this fluctuates day to day. $50 billion. American Airlines is only $28 billion. Airbnb, and I know that number fluctuates, $24 billion. Marriott was 22, but Marriott just bought Starwood, or announced its purchase of Starwood 2 days ago, so that will skyrocket. Airbnb won't be bigger than them anymore. But again, these are major players in our city. They're here to stay. So the challenges of government are pretty unique. As was mentioned, every one of these sharing economy models upsets the status quo. And frankly, when you're in government, the easiest thing for us to do is to support the status quo. The status quo actually often pays for government, it influences government, and it's pretty easy for us to say, we're not going to change. We've talked about this. There's a very, very uncertain regulatory role of government with many of these new companies and these new sectors. This is something we have struggled with in San Francisco over the last 5 years. We think we've done a pretty good job. And it really does reflect just what the Vice Minister said, free market versus protection of citizens and workers. Our role is somewhere to come into the middle of that. Workers' rights play a big key in this, of course. And we're seeing behavior change. As I described with my young colleague, her behavior at work and in life is really different than the behavior that I had 30 years ago when I was in her position. We have to recognize that in government, that behavior has changed, and we have to adjust. We can't assume that we're going to lead our city and have the same kind of city that we did 30 years ago, because it's going across the board. Now, our response, and we've been muddling our way through this for 5 years, okay, I don't want to say we have all the answers, has been first that we recognize that the sharing economy exists. There are many places in the world that I think do not recognize that yet. We get visitors, I get visitors almost every week from around the world, ministers, governors, ambassadors, mayors, and they don't even want to talk about this. They just say, we're stopping it, it doesn't exist, we're not going to do it. We have recognized that that can't be the case. That in San Francisco, this is now a major part. When you have Airbnb, you have Uber as major employers, as major parts of our city, along with hundreds of others. We have to recognize this exists, and we have to tackle it head on. We recognize that our government, and I think this is a key, represents the interest of the citizens. We are a democratic government, we're put in by the people, and we have to recognize that what the people want is what's our responsibility, not what a special interest responsibility is. We have to work, and we've been working to this, to reconcile the traditional regulatory role we had with these new alternatives. And instead of taking on the sharing economy, work collaboratively, work together with them, okay? Hand in hand to try to come up with new answers. And most importantly, how do we use the shared economy to enhance government operations? This is a great opportunity and a unique opportunity for us to increase how we provide services to our people, to make us more efficient. Young people today demand response. They don't want to wait weeks or days. And so maybe we can use this shared economy to enhance our operations. Airbnb is a good example. I know there's going to be a whole Airbnb presentation later today, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because they know more than I do. But Airbnb is a challenge everywhere in the world. Okay? But San Francisco, where Airbnb started and where I think we're still probably more popular than anywhere else in the world, decided that instead of saying Airbnb is bad, let's work together. And so we've worked collaboratively together with Airbnb, with the citizens, with landlords, with the hotel industry. And actually in San Francisco, I must note, the hotel industry is not so anti-Airbnb, largely because our hotels are at 90 to 95% occupancy these days. So they don't see Airbnb as a competitor. Okay, they see it as an enhancement almost to theirs. So that hasn't been as big an issue. It's been a much bigger issue with landlords and with tenants and people like this. So we've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meetings, collaborations, sit-downs, workshops to try to work this out. We became the first city to formally allow Airbnb rentals a couple of years ago, and now we're being followed by everybody like that. We were able to work with Airbnb to get them to start to play a role and understand that there is some regulation that needs to take place here, collecting hotel taxes. We get $1 million a month from Airbnb in hotel taxes now. Okay? We created the first, and this is brand new, so we don't know if it's going to work, to be honest with you, but we've created this Office of Short-Term Rentals. We've now put regulations in about Airbnb. You can only rent out a site 90 days a year if you don't live in it. If you live in it, you can rent it out every day. You have to register if you're doing this site. And we're putting all of this into shape. This was done collaboratively with the industry, with the landlords, with the homeowners, and the city to try to come up to a solution to ensure that we have a safe and adequate system. But Airbnb is here to stay. It's a big part of our city, and we're going to find a solution. We don't know if it's going to work. Okay? And there's still a lot of people who don't like this. We just had an election last week. There was an initiative put in by people that hate Airbnb to stop it. It lost, so I think the people spoke. But I'm not saying that everybody loves what we're doing, but we're moving ahead in a measured manner to come up with a solution. We're also trying to embrace this new sector as a city. As I said, I think this is a really important thing to think about for governments, is don't just look at this as a challenge. Look at this as an opportunity. Okay? We've created a sharing working economy group in the city, and I know that sounds very bureaucratic. Okay, let's create a task force. But we've brought in people from the industry. We're bringing in the government leaders of different departments. We're bringing in citizen groups. We're saying, let's look at how this is affecting our city. Again, let's not just sit in our government ivory tower and make decisions. Or let's not just sit in the corporate tower and make decisions. Let's bring us all together and say, how can we work to make sure that this economy, these companies are a very important part of our city, and what are the issues that we need to do? This is just starting again. It's the first in the United States. Just last week, 2 weeks ago, our mayor joined with Kiva, the microfinance group, and decided we'd do Kiva SF as part of our Invest in Neighborhoods. Like a lot of cities, we have neighborhoods that need a lot of work and a lot of investment, and so we decided, why don't we join with Kiva and see if we can get in some of this crowdfunding, crowdsourcing type of activity in order to help our small retailers in various neighborhoods. Again, this is brand new. It's just being rolled out. We don't know if it's going to work, but this is an opportunity to try. This is a whole new, unique way to try to help economic development in your city using, in this case, crowdfunding. Most interestingly, we have joined in a partnership with many of the shared economy companies for emergencies. San Francisco, like every city, we have earthquakes. We may have a tsunami someday. There's terrorist activity. There's riots. There's all these kinds of things that go on. And we're constantly creating and working on emergency preparedness plans and programs. And what we've now done is we've sat down with, in this case, you see Airbnb, Lyft, Nextdoor, Sidecar, Yurtle. These companies, there's actually many more involved, and put them under an umbrella, and they're actually designing programs to what to do in case of emergencies. Airbnb, for example, and they did this after Hurricane Sandy, has the ability to motivate people to get rooms open for those that have lost rooms. Lyft can provide rides to service personnel or to people who need rides. Nextdoor is a communications method to get word out to your neighborhood. A Sidecar is for communications. Yurtle, again, is to move things around. What if we need clothing? What if we need food? What if we need health supplies to do all these kinds of things? So I think this is a really unique thing, again, to understand is don't take this economy as a challenge. It is a challenge, but take it as an opportunity. And that's what we're doing in San Francisco, and I think that's what makes our government more unique than anybody else's in the world, is we're facing those challenges head on. We're negotiating to try to come up with those, but we're saying, what are the opportunities at the same time? And they're really providing us some unique and interesting options. As you can see, our program with the shared economy has now been adopted by the White House, and they're looking to make this national. So we think, as usual, San Francisco leads the country, That's what we do in San Francisco. Lessons learned. We can't choose the winners and losers. I've hosted many government delegations from around the world who tell us they are looking at all these kinds of companies and they're picking out this one and they're going to put it in an incubator and they're going to give it money and they're going to help it grow. And we think, to be flat out honest, that's ludicrous because we don't think any government can decide who the winner and loser is. Only the market can. No government in this world would have ever designed Uber. No government would have ever designed Airbnb. Okay, and yet those are probably the two largest and most popular. So we think you have to leave this to the market and respond to that. Shared economy is here to stay. Again, I meet lots of people who tell me they're going to stop it in their places. They're going to keep it out. I had the Minister of Innovation for Catalonia, Spanish colleague, who came in and he told us all about how Catalonia is the center of innovation for Europe. And it's great universities, it has great people, it has great technology, and we brought up Airbnb, we brought up the shared economy, and his answer was, we're stopping all that right today. That stuff is bad. You can't have that. Pretty soon people are going to be ordering water via the internet, and they're going to be ordering electricity, and we said, fine, what if they do? To us, you can't have that kind of attitude. You have to understand that it's here to stay and accept that. Understand that these are popular with the citizens. And again, as government, who do we represent? Most important thing is these are not black and white issues. We have lots of people in our city that would like to say these are black and white issues. Airbnb is good or bad. Uber is good or bad. Lyft is good or bad. Yurtle is good or bad. Okay, they're not. There's no black and white issues with these new economies, with these disruptive technologies. It takes a lot of work to come up with what that middle ground is. And that's what we've been working at in San Francisco. And again, I think we're unique among many places in the world in that we have always, from day one, largely because of our city's leadership, said we will find solutions. We won't just say yes or no to these things. And if there's any lesson that I would leave, that would be my lesson, is find the middle ground, work collaboratively on these, look for the opportunities. It's a difficult task. We're not saying we have the answers. We don't even know if we've done the right thing. But we've done this over a number of years. We've gone step by step by step. We've included all the different players, from the citizens to the neighborhoods, the companies, to those companies that are going to lose, and some are going to lose. We've brought them all to the table. We're going to have to continue to do that because we don't have the answers yet. But we will continue to do it in that way. Again, we're not going to be judgmental and say this is right and this is wrong. We're not going to protect the status quo. We're not going to protect a special interest just because it's a special interest. We're going to try to find new solutions and new opportunities for our city and county. We're just seeing the start. I can tell you that I guess next time I come and I do this speech, I'll be able to show you more than 4 slides of me and the sharing economy. I think there'll probably be 44 slides, if I have any way, like my young counterparts. But come to San Francisco and you can see how the sharing economy has infiltrated, if I may use that term, or become part of everyday life for virtually all of our young generation, and it's even seeping over into our old guys like me, and has really become an integral part of our economy. And you have to embrace it. You have to come with new solutions, and that's what we've been doing on a step-by-step, very difficult, very hard, very laborious process in San Francisco. Kamsahamnida. Thank you very much.